These birds are a mystery on wings. They're homing pigeons. They're brave, determined flyers who've done active service in 2 world wars. They provide the most democratic sport in the world, pigeon racing. In Britain alone, there are tens of thousands of fanciers, as pigeon enthusiasts call themselves. It's a sport for the highest or the humblest. Here's a famous loft, and Frank George of Wellingborough, who's a leading fancier, is inspecting some of his cubs. His place is run with all the precision of a racing stable. This is his most famous bird, the Flying Dutchman, long-distance champion, now used for breeding. It cost £800, the dearest pigeon in history. There are more than 1,000 pigeons in these lofts, and everything is on the grand scale, under an expert loft manager. Youngsters bred here are exported all over the world. These are young birds, not long off the nest. They're lucky. They've started off in the ascot of the pigeon world. But the same dreams and hopes go on in more modest lofts all over Britain. For pigeon racing is very much a game for optimists. And many a small man has carried off the top prizes. It needs luck, judgment, and endless patience. Now here's Fred Crook of St Albans. He's a keen fancier, typical of thousands, with a home-built loft at the end of his garden. He's bought a squeaker, a young bird of a special pedigree line, worth about £5. Steadily it gets to know the fancier and the family. It helps when the children make a fuss of the youngsters, for racing pigeons must get used to being handled, and even like it. Yes, these little chaps get pampered. They thrive on it. Soon they're no longer squeakers, they're flapping their wings. They go out. They're lured back by the rattle of the food tray. The racing pigeon must go home through that trap without wasting time. This is where training is vital. When they're about 3 months old, they'll be ready for their first flight home. The fancier calls this the first toss. The birds are put into the basket, and now comes the real test. Yes, those birds will certainly get to know the old basket. They've been kept in one for hours on end as part of their training. They learn to eat and sleep in them on long journeys. It's a pigeon's life. The first toss is anything up to 5 miles from home. It's a great moment when the fancier sees the miracle of the homing instinct in a new generation. He has losses, but not many. He knows that even if there were an identical loft in every garden, in every street, his birds would automatically find the target 99 times in 100. Here they go, flying off to the start of their racing life, flying off into the future. Among them, he's sure there's a champion, for the fancier lives on hope. This is very much a family sport, and back at the loft, the youngsters wait for the birds to come back, to note the strong flyers, to sort out the best birds. The months go by. That squeaker is now a racing pigeon. He's packed off in the basket every summer weekend. Here he is, back from the races. He gets used to the routine that's to be his life. Off with his race band as soon as you can handle him. Put it into the time clock and stamp it. The clock has been checked. There's no fiddling in this game. And for all the fancier knows, he may have a winner. After he's raced a couple of years, our little chap has got it all worked out. Hours in the basket and a good belt home to the little woman. That's the way it goes. He can even fly in the Pigeon Grand National, the annual race home from Pau in the French Pyrenees. Nearly 3,000 entries are assembled yearly at Oxford. Each bird is stamped and ringed and its details registered. Pigeon racing isn't really a betting sport, but a man can back his own entry in the various race pools, and the prize money here can total £10,000 or more. Then it's back to the basket, where a bird has to spend so much of his life, with maybe a thought for the little woman on the eggs back home. The pigeon special is loaded up for the long journey. First stop, the airport. churns of local water. Well, these fanciers think of everything. Here's the feed. None of that rich French stuff. All aboard for France and the long race home. Here we are at Gatwick. Don't forget that nice British water. It's so dependable. They're away, 3,000 pigeons. This is the way to travel. It's so much easier on the poor old wings. In they come at Pau, 3,000 worldly wise little travellers carrying 3,000 hopes of success. And they're a good 600 miles from their home loft. But the distance doesn't worry them. While there's light in the sky, they can fly on and on. But first, they need a good night's rest on the local airfield. The baskets are unloaded and stacked up ready for the off tomorrow. The handlers who flew over with them give the birds their regular feed, not forgetting, of course, a good swig of that water. Yes, these racing pigeons are certainly looked after. They're the aristocrats of the bird world. Now we're getting ready for the off, undoing all but the last catches on the baskets. And here they go. Yes, they're off. The last ones will catch up and join the flock as it wheels round to get its bearings. 600 miles and more ahead. The race is so timed that the birds will roost in northern France at sundown. If they reached the channel, they'd be in trouble, for they'd try to roost on the sea as they came down in the darkness. Even the gendarmes seem impressed at their courage as they wing away over mountain and sea, obeying a blind instinct. Pigeons cover 40 or 45 miles an hour in still air. With the wind behind them, they may do 90. A full day after they leave Pau, the first birds get home to the south of England. They trap in and have their race bands removed. The time is punched on the clock. Here he is back home after a tough race, broken only by a night out on the tiles on some farmhouse in Normandy. Best not to tell the little woman about this. She might not understand. The time of every arrival home has to be wired to the race secretary at Oxford, and as the minutes tick by, hundreds of telegrams are delivered in batches. The exact distance to each loft has been worked out to the nearest yard. The race is won, not by the first home, but by the pigeon with the highest average speed. Secretary Bob Antingham soon knows the probable winner, but the various pools take a time working out and may not be settled until much later. Our little fellow may have gained permanent fame, or just won a few pounds, or merely had another outing. He's canny, but there's one thing he can't tell us. How does he get this instinct? What makes him tick? Nobody knows. The fancy has many theories, some very fancy indeed. We know he doesn't start with a full instinct. He has to be trained. He's lost in fog, so vision's part of it. He's best in sunshine. He seems to take a bearing on the sun. Lastly, he has remarkable eyesight. He knows where he's going all right, which is where he has the advantage over some of the rest of us.